Welcome to the 2022 college football predictions video in the preseason, and in this video I'm pretty much going to be highlighting my winners from the Power 5 conferences and my year-end college football playoff top 6 positions. Let's get started with number 1, Alabama, and I agree with the AP poll completely. There's nothing really to tell me otherwise. Alabama's biggest weakness last season was on their offensive line, and they got a pickup in Tyler Steen from Vanderbilt. He started 33 consecutive games, and he is a monster. So he could shore up their offensive line play, and I know that that is going to be a point of emphasis over the offseason for Nick Saban's team. Number 2, I also agree with AP poll. I'm going with Ohio State. I think quarterback CJ Stroud will be the X factor for them. He also has one of the best receiving rooms in the nation, so this will be an offense that lights up college football. But on the defensive side, there's plenty of question marks. They have a new coordinator in Jim Knowles, and some of their transfers will be under the microscope early on, particularly in their secondary. So we'll have to see what happens with Ohio State on that side of the ball. But overall, I have Ohio State easily cruising to my Big Ten championship and subsequent college football playoff berth. Next, in third, I have Clemson here. This is a big question mark coming into this season. They obviously have a great defense. They lost both coordinators, but decided to hire internally for culture purposes. This is an interesting tactic by Dabo Swinney, but who am I to question his decisions on that side of things? They didn't even finish that bad last year after what looked to be a pretty terrible start. They ended up 10-3, which is pretty good for the average team. If their offense can produce like I think that they will this season, their schedule is certainly open for them here as they get a couple of tune-up games before their first ranked game against Wake Forest. Outside of conference, they of course play Notre Dame at Notre Dame, so that is another chance for them to bolster their resume against what I think to be a slightly overrated Notre Dame team. At number 4, I've got the surprise pick in Utah, and at first I was kind of a coin flip on whether I think Utah would get it in. I think they're a bit overrated at the time being at number 6 in the AP poll, but I think by season's end they can take care of a weak Pac-12 overall. They get USC at home. They do have to travel to Oregon late in the season, but their Pac-12 championship berth could be locked up by then, so that could be their loss. I have them losing a game. I don't know if it will be this first game at Florida. That's a tough place to play. It's hot, contrary to Utah's Salt Lake City home, and it's a cross-country trip. Of course, Florida is a terribly hard place to play, even if they aren't in their best year like they are this year. But ultimately, I have Utah taking care of the Pac-12 and finishing with one loss, which is something that Pac-12 teams, including Utah, have failed to do over the past few years. Of course, Cam Rising's impact on Utah last season is something that brings me to have them all the way up here. He was 9-1 in his first 10 starts, and of course, they played a tight one with Ohio State. So something similar to Ohio State, the defense and the secondary are going to be key for this Utah team going forward. At number 5, I've got Georgia. I see them going 12-0 in the regular season. Maybe they have a loss, but I do see them losing to Alabama in the SEC championship. And last year was kind of unique. There weren't really enough teams to fill the spots, so it allowed 2 SEC teams to get in pretty easily into the college football playoff. I don't think that will be the case this year, so I'm placing Georgia at number 3. Of course, the biggest question mark for this Georgia team is how they can recover from losing 5 defensive players from a year ago and their defensive coordinator, who is now the head coach at Oregon. Of course, they still have plenty of talent on both sides of the ball, so I think Georgia will have a chance to run the table. Of course, their first game against Oregon is probably one of their toughest on the schedule, but we will really have to see with this Georgia team. Number 6, I went with a little bit of a wild card pick Secondary to Utah is Baylor. They have a good chance to win the Big 12. They're actually the preseason pick to win it in the media poll. Between them, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State, I'm not really sure what I'm going to go with, but Baylor had just a little bit more continuity. They lost most of their offensive production, believe it or not, in the off season, and will have a new starting QB in Blake Shapen. In addition, one of their most electrifying players coming out of camp is Squirrel Williams, who will have a heavy influence on the offense in the rush game. Over his past few seasons, he's been limited to just 32 carries due to various injuries, but he's supposed to be one of the team's most electrifying players. We'll see if we see it early on. Baylor has definitely an interesting schedule, playing at BYU. BYU is another team with an interesting schedule, but I ultimately am choosing Baylor as my surprise pick to win the Big 12. They started out at number 10 in the AP poll. A lot of people think that's a little high for them, but I think they have a road, and they have the home game against Oklahoma State, so that is one that I think they can win. They do have to go to Oklahoma, but they have a chance at that point. Maybe they can suffer a loss and then win out in the Big 12 championship. We'll just have to see what happens. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more college football content.